Let's take a deeper look on how money is created, focusing on the United States. Why? Because the US dollar is the world's reserve currency, which means whatever happens there affects the rest of us too. Central banks around the world are doing the same thing, so this isn't just an American issue. Let's begin. Right now, central banks are creating money at unprecedented levels. But if we've always been told that money is scarce, something we must work our whole lives for, how can it just appear out of nowhere? Where is this money coming from? Who pays it back? And what are the long-term consequences? This episode breaks down the three main ways that money is created today and what each method means for our economy. It will also reveal the root cause of wealth inequality. Watch all the way through, and you'll come away with a clear understanding of what's happening in today's financial system. Things might seem simple at first, but as the episode progresses, you'll see how bizarre the reality really is. Let's start with physical money, the cash and coins that governments issue. In most countries, this money is created through a central bank or mint and controlled by the government. But here's the catch. Physical money only makes up about 3% to 8% of all money in the economy. Its main role is to meet daily demands for cash, like ATM withdrawals. Take a $10 bill, for example. It only costs around 3 cents to produce, which means the government profits $9.97. That profit is called seigniorage. It benefits the government and reduces the need for higher taxes. So why not just print more money to pay off debt or fund public projects? The answer is inflation. If politicians could print money freely, they'd be tempted to overdo it, leading to too much currency in circulation and a collapse in value. That's happened before. Look at countries like Zimbabwe, Venezuela, or Argentina. When money loses its purchasing power, people lose faith in it. In Venezuela, people have even turned their worthless currency into crafts because it holds no value anymore. Money is supposed to be a reliable measure of value, but its value depends on how much of it exists. Gold used to act as a control mechanism. It kept governments from creating unlimited money because you couldn't print gold. But in 1971, President Nixon took the US off the gold standard, removing that restraint. Since then, money has become elastic. It's no longer tied to anything physical. The US dollar backs most other currencies, so Nixon's move affected the whole world. Even though governments can't directly create money at will anymore, that power has been passed to private banks. This leads us to the second type of money creation: digital money created by private banks through lending. In most developed economies, 97% of all money is digital and created by banks. This happens when a bank gives you a loan. It doesn't come from someone else's savings. The money is created out of thin air, just typed into a computer. For example, if you take out a $500,000 loan to buy a house, the bank creates $500,000 in your account, and you owe them that amount plus interest. When you buy the house, that money goes to the seller, who can spend it elsewhere. This is how money enters the economy. The twist is that if we want economic growth under this system, we need more debt. Debt is money, just seen from two angles: an asset for the lender and a liability for the borrower. The banks benefit the most because they charge interest on this new money. When you pay the loan back, the money is destroyed, but the bank keeps the interest as profit. Real estate is the biggest area where banks create money. It's seen as low risk since the house acts as collateral. In countries like Australia, this has caused a massive property bubble. Banks have shifted away from funding businesses and instead focus on housing, where profits are more reliable. People borrow more to afford homes, which drives prices even higher. Over time, this leads to unsustainable debt and inflated housing markets. It's a system built on constant borrowing. When you deposit money in a bank, you're no longer its legal owner. The bank is. They're allowed to lend out most of it, traditionally about 90%, while keeping a small fraction in reserve. This system is called fractional reserve banking. It means your money can be lent out to someone else, who can then deposit it into another bank, which can then lend out a portion again. This process multiplies the original deposit into much more money circulating in the economy. A single $100 deposit can eventually become $1,000 through repeated lending. But in March 2020, the U.S. Federal Reserve eliminated the reserve requirement. Now, banks don't need to keep any reserves. They can lend out as much as they want. On top of that, banks can use your deposit money to invest in risky financial products like derivatives and securities. These are complex bets on whether prices will go up or down. Sometimes they're so risky and layered that no one even knows how much is actually at stake. The 2008 financial crisis was triggered in part by these instruments. The total value of the derivatives market is estimated to be over $1 quadrillion, more than 10 times the world's economy. This creates an unstable and unpredictable system. Everyone takes on debt and spends more, which keeps the economy going. But when people can't take on more debt, they default and the cycle collapses. Before 2008, this would have led to a recession, but that year marked a turning point. The world wasn't ready to face a downturn. Banks had become so big and essential to money creation that governments had no choice but to bail them out using central bank funds. The public was left with the debt. Since then, the economy has been running on life support, zero or near zero interest rates, and massive government borrowing. These short-term fixes have led to long-term problems. The government now relies on central banks to create money digitally. The Federal Reserve does this by buying government bonds and securities, increasing the money supply. It's money created from nothing. When the Federal Reserve buys government bonds, it's injecting money directly into the financial system. But this money isn't a gift. It's a loan to be repaid by future generations through taxation or inflation. The central bank can create digital money and buy financial assets. But by law, the government must repay the debt with interest. So while central banks have infinite money-creating power, that money comes with a catch. After the 2008 crash, the Fed began using a method called quantitative easing, or QE. It was first tested by Japan in the late 80s. The U.S. used it to inject $700 billion into the financial system during the crisis, buying toxic assets from banks and corporations. At the time, it was seen as an emergency measure, but over the next decade, it became the new normal. By 2014, the Fed's balance sheet had ballooned to $4.4 trillion. Then came COVID-19, and another $3 trillion was printed in just 3 months. This money flooded the markets but had less and less effect on the real economy. Instead, it inflated asset prices. In April 2020, while 30 million people lost their jobs, the stock market had its best month in decades. That's because QE money flowed to banks and hedge funds, not ordinary people. They reinvested it into stocks and real estate, driving prices up and making the rich even richer. Inflation didn't show up in grocery stores yet. It appeared in housing and financial assets. Stocks soared, homes became unaffordable, and wealth inequality reached extreme levels. The people who receive newly printed money first benefit the most before inflation hits. This is known as the Cantillon effect. The rich get richer and the poor get left behind. Stock markets used to reflect the real economy. Now they're inflated by central bank policies. Some central banks, like Japan's, even own the majority of their stock markets. The Swiss National Bank owns billions in U.S. tech stocks. These institutions are creating money from nothing and buying real-world assets with it. This leads to a major question. How sustainable is this? Central banks can't go bankrupt because they can create money endlessly. But that doesn't mean there are no consequences. The gap between rich and poor is widening. The middle class is being squeezed out. And many are starting to question why they have to pay taxes when banks and corporations seem to get free money. Governments are trapped. They owe trillions to central banks and can't raise taxes too much without upsetting the public. The hope is that borrowed money will stimulate growth, but more often, it just props up markets. Some experts think this could lead to a major crisis in the next decade, perhaps a period of stagflation, where we have both high inflation and low economic growth. This happened in the 1970s, but this time, it could be worse because of the sheer scale of debt and economic fragility. Others suggest we may see the world lose faith in the US dollar. Then again, the opposite might happen. In a collapsing world economy, the US dollar could still be seen as the safest option. This is the idea behind the dollar milkshake theory. Some think modern monetary theory, MMT, can save us. It suggests that governments can print unlimited money as long as they can pay the interest. But it's untested, and many believe it's just another fragile workaround. Others look to digital stablecoins or local currencies. Some communities in Venezuela and Italy have even started issuing their own money. So what can the average person do? While I can't give financial advice, it might be wise to diversify into non-debt-based assets. Older folks might look at gold. Even banks like Goldman Sachs have praised gold as the money of last resort. Younger people might explore cryptocurrency. Others study what central banks are buying and try to ride that wave. In the end, it's clear, printing money doesn't create real wealth. Real wealth comes from innovation, production, and investment in society. But we chose gambling, housing, and speculation instead. Now we must live with the consequences. Still, history shows that crisis can lead to reform. Out of the worst situations, some of the greatest changes can arise. Thanks for watching InvestingFlix. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and drop a comment below. For more expert insights on personal finance, investing, and wealth building, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out.